Hey, my name is Benji, and we're taking a look at the Cyber Era CE-01 King Bee Knight. Or, at least I think that's what this thing is called. The box says King Bee Knight, but doesn't say Cyber Era anywhere on the packaging. Whereas most of the online listings for this figure say Cyber Era, but all have slightly different names. All you really need to know is that this figure is an oversized version of the Transcraft Beetle figure, which is itself a third-party figure of the Bumblebee design from his titular movie. I actually tried to get that figure for this review, but apparently the universe won't allow me to have what I want. So I guess King Bee here is technically a knockoff of a knockoff? Did Transcraft sell the rights to their model? Maybe it's a case of Cyber Era and Transcraft just being different divisions of the same company for some weird tax loophole. If we dig any deeper, we might find a 6 degrees of separation game of questionable legality. Ethics of copyright law aside, the painting and the sculpting on this figure is awesome. Comically large feet and all. King Bee here is looking like a Tom Warburton character. The details and proportions are a practically perfect recreation of his on-screen appearance. From every angle. Look at that back! Sure, we do have the obligatory Bumblebee door wings, but you can always fold those in for a cleaner profile. It's good to know that at least some engineers understand that dog food does not belong in Transformers figures. This figure doesn't even look like it can transform. Oh, but it can. Stay tuned for that. And apparently there's another Bumblebee movie figure coming out that also looks very promising, but I think I prefer this guy based on what photos I've seen so far. Now I must admit, I do admire the dirty, rusty paint job on the Transcraft Beetle more. Certainly more movie accurate, but that doesn't mean I don't like King Bee's paint job here. The cleaner, fresh from the factory look is done really well here. As long as the paint is durable enough to hold up over time, I'm still a happy camper. Honestly, the few scuff marks here and there aren't too bad, and I shouldn't be too surprised considering the close clearances at play here. I'll just call it free weathering. There is actually a version of this figure you can buy with a battle damaged paint job, but good luck getting your hands on one. I guess I could just custom paint this guy to my liking like I did my Revenge of the Fallen Optimus Prime back in high school. I'll just let you pretend that What I've Done by Linkin Park is playing so I can ride the wave of a dead meme and still get this video monetized. Speaking of comparisons between this guy and Transcraft Beetle, you do get some accessories. The blades and light up blaster are included with both figures. Very cool. Ah, shit. As well as these excellently detailed default and battle mode head sculpts, held on by just a ball joint. But King Bee's heads are different in that they have light up eyes, and that's where this Warhammer comes in. It's been a few years since I've seen Bumblebee, so I have no memory of this being in the movie. It doesn't plug into his hand or anything. But if you can get it balanced in his hands, it can look cool nonetheless. There's also this Autobot logo shape on the hammerhead that I imagine Cyber Era would have filled in if they weren't afraid of getting sued out of existence. Anyway, there's a magnet in the pommel. Just hold that up to the head once to turn the lights on. Looks appropriately bug-eyed. Once again to dim the lights a bit, and once more to turn them off. Same on both heads. An unnecessary addition, but certainly a welcome one. And all the batteries required for all of these lights come included and pre-installed. If you ever need to replace the batteries, you just pop off this cap and be very careful when doing this. The antenna on both heads don't snap in or anything. They're just held in place by the cap. So it can be pretty precarious trying to get this all back together, especially when you're trying to do it on camera. But once you do get it back together, it works like a charm. Anyway, to actually access the batteries, you basically do have to deconstruct the entire head, which is less than convenient. But it's simple enough to put it all back together, so oh well. Really, my only minor gripe with the accessories is that there's nowhere to store them in either mode. I do have one major gripe with the accessories though, and it's that the battle mode head is too big. If you have the battle mode head on, it will not fit when you go to transform him into car mode. Apparently that was already an issue with the original Transcraft Beetle, so I can't see why they wouldn't have been able to accommodate that if they're already upscaling this figure. But I guess beggars can't be choosers. Now there was one big concern I had with getting this figure, and that was tolerance. And I'm not talking about whether I think Bumblebee is woke or wants to own the libs. I'm talking about engineering tolerances. Whenever you upscale not just Transformers figures, but any CAD model of sufficient complexity, most if not all of the tiny gaps between parts will also grow. So is that the case with Cyber Era's King Bee Knight? Did the engineers mitigate the joint gap growth? Well, I can say that after handling this guy and transforming him several times now, that even though there aren't any ratchet joints on this figure, all of these friction joints have remained stiff after loads of use. Unlike my dick. Okay, there are a couple joints that are flabby. Like my dick. These elbows could stand to be tightened. We're able to tighten this pin somehow, or you can try this super glue trick if that doesn't work. There's also this waist connection here that's undesirably wobbly. The torso plugs into the hips with this peg and hole for the transformation, so you could either thicken the peg or fill this hole, or try to stiffen this hinge where the wobble comes from if you're so inclined. I am not. Of course, this all might just be the case for my copy, so your mileage may vary. Despite that, this figure feels pleasingly solid overall, with a nice heft thanks to some die-cast metal. Anything with this gunmetal-y sheen is metal, but there's also plenty of painted metal in the legs that are noticeably chilly. That's one thing King Bee and I have in common. Calves of steel. Overall, posability is pretty good, save for the legs. The lack of an ankle or knee swivel is disappointing, but this knee bend articulation is neat. That gap's kind of weird though. I can't really see any space for extra joints, seeing as these gams contain half the car mode. Wait, size comparisons first. Here is a standard size Rubik's Cube, the Evasion Mode Optimus Prime that was also featured in another video of mine. Be sure to go look for him. My favorite Transformers character when I was a kid, Silverbolt. Yes, I am a simp. Here's an approximation of what Transcraft Beetle would look like next to King Bee Knight. And once again, my Revenge of the Fallen Optimus Prime. Alright, let's get this guy on 4 wheels. And these instructions are basically useless. Don't bother. One thing to note about this hip piece here, make sure that it's angled downward slightly in relation to the rest of the roof. If that piece is parallel, then these roof panels later won't sit flush. So make sure this hip piece is angled down a little bit so these roof panels can plug in all the way. At the end, just massage these panely bits into place. They should fit together pretty much perfectly. Honestly, this transformation wasn't too difficult. Actually, kind of enjoyed it, despite it feeling like a handful of pasta at times. There were a few times where I felt like I had to force things into place, but nothing's broken on me yet, knock on wood. It's ultimately worth the effort though, because holy crap, look at this car mode. The engineers behind this figure must have used the Allspark itself to get this to work, because at least to my eyes, this looks like a very faithful rendition of a Volkswagen Tepine. Excuse me. But I'm sure all of the car fetishists in the comments will describe at length how wrong I am. One detail that I do know is that old Beetles really did only have one rear view mirror on the driver's side. You know, back in the days when safety features in cars were more of a suggestion than actual rules. This is made of die-cast metal too. Dang it. Very tiny piece that pops out all the time, very easy to lose. I'd recommend gluing that in. However, I'm happy to report that everything else in the car mode seems satisfyingly robust. Nothing feels like it's gonna unplug unless you want it to. And these rubber tires ensure that it rolls pretty well, even with the noticeable robo junk poking out the bottom. As you saw, this figure makes effective use of fake car parts and the inside-out method to bring us a borderline perfect conversion. You will have some slight clearance issue with these faux headlights on these back wheels. If you don't have the wheels completely plugged in, then those faux headlights might scrape along the bottom. And to all the critics of fake car parts and the inside-out method for Transformers figures, saying that it's against the rules. What rules, you sons of bitches? The movies themselves cheat with mass shifting and whatever the hell this is. I challenge you to make something better. The only minor gripes I have with the car mode are, again, the paint job, but I can fix that myself if I really want to. I've seen some comments on other video reviews for this figure that they wish there were some panel lines where the door seams would be, which I guess would be a nice detail, but the car mode is already pretty panelicious, so it's kind of a moot point. And these nubbins. Maybe these could have been double hinge joints to help flatten out the roof, but I'm splitting hairs here. This car mode is great. Size comparisons again, Rubik's Cube, Prime, Silverbolt, Transcraft Beetle, and Prime again. You know, comparing these two figures, it really makes you appreciate how good the engineering has gotten in Transformers figures. I remember when this Optimus Prime used to be the gold standard for live-action Transformers figures, but nowadays he looks like a laughingstock. All things considered, I'm kinda glad I got the Cyber Era figure over the Transcraft Beetle. This size feels appropriate when handling, and if it were any smaller, I mean, sure, the joints would overall be tighter, but I think the transformation in particular would be too fiddly and fussy to be fun. So yes, at least for me personally, 8 inches really is just as good, if not better, than 6.7 inches. There's a Viagra joke in there somewhere. Alright, time for me to come clean. If you're new here, you might be understandably confused. This video is a continuation of my series called In the Vein Of, where I mimic the styles of different YouTubers in order to demonstrate why their videos work better than their peers, from a filmmaking point of view. Go ahead and watch my other videos in this series to get an idea of what I mean. If you're a fan of Transformer toy reviews, you've probably already figured out that I was paying homage to JobbytheHong, who I have officially crowned the king of Transformer toy review YouTubers. If you disagree with my assessment, you are incorrect, as I am an infallible authority on this matter. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be doing a follow-up video fully breaking down why Jobby's videos are better than his contemporaries, as well as a deep dive into the Transformers toy review side of YouTube as a whole. If that interests you, then subscribe so you can stay tuned for that video. See you all then in another year.